Radio.
We now welcome on Knee Brace Radio a guy that I like the cut of his jib. He's the co-host of the Bengals Orange and Black Insider, Mr. John Sheehan. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, no problem, man. You know, we've had a Jets insider on. Kyle is a Jets fan, and I thought it was way past due for us to. I mean, I had to find a Bengals insider, and then for now we have a Bengals insider on the show. So right off the bat, obviously we just got past the draft. Thoughts?
Solid draft overall. I think grading drafts. I mean, first of all, grading drafts right after it happens. Like, yes, it's pointless, but it's still fun to do. It's still content for us to absorb and stuff. It's just like everyone's grading scale is different because everyone has different expectations and how they see teams and players and stuff like that. For me personally, I look at where players that they drafted, where they were expected to go, what they're expected to do. And I think when you take into account both of those factors, I think the Bengals did an above average job, a good job. They didn't screw anything up. They didn't really reach too bad or get too much value out of their players. I think they ultimately went right around where they should have gone, which is basically like, you know, you do your job, your board pretty much matches where everyone else's board is. And I think that is commendable. So I think, like, if you want to give a grade for something like that, it could be somewhere in the B range, but I think they accomplished what they wanted to. They got Jamar Chase, they've beefed up the trenches, and I think they got a lot of players that are going to be quality contributors. And if they get a handful of starters from this draft out of 10 picks, I think that's a job well done.
Yeah, I think PFF had them at a B, so I thought that was pretty fair. Being a Jets fan, as Nick mentioned earlier, I'm used to seeing horrible offensive lines, as are you guys. When you guys took Jamar Chase with Penei Sewell still on the board, were you a little bit shocked? I know personally I was like, well, then the Panthers should just select him. But I figured they would have immediately went to protect Joe Burrow after what happened last year.
So I wasn't shocked because it was trending in that direction for the better part of the last month. There is a great Bengals insider by the name of Malik Wright, who is very well connected within the Bengals organization. And he put it at 95% they were going to draft Chase like 2 weeks before the draft. And that was the first real sign like, okay, this Chase talk, it's legit. And it began, I think, right around Chase's pro day. And also that was when free agency was dying down. The Bengals had signed Riley Reef to a 1-year deal to basically make a stopgap at that right tackle position. You're thinking, okay, they at least somewhat address the offensive line. They've done nothing to the receiver position aside from re-signing backup Mike Thomas. And they have Jamar Chase, who's likely going to be there. There's the Joe Burrow connection. It made sense from that sense. But once we started hearing more people connected with the team, linking them to Chase, you're thinking, okay, this is probably going to happen. And so when it happened, when Chase was drafted, it wasn't a surprise. And I do get the Penei Sewell side of the argument, but I think the Bengals are buying into like the data argument of one elite receiver is more valuable than one elite offensive lineman. And if you look at their draft history and their team history overall, they rarely go just any time at all without having a true number one receiver. They went from Chad Johnson to AJ Green. Now they're going from AJ Green to Jamar Chase, and they had just have a great history of those dominant receivers and pairing those dominant receivers with their franchise quarterback. So this was just the next logical transition into the next part of their, I guess, the Zach Taylor era, if you will.
So this draft was super deep with wide receivers. Where did you personally have Jamar Chase on your like wide receiver ranking? Like obviously top 3, but I feel like if I talk to 5 people, I'd get 5 different rankings of who was the best.
Yeah. So I think like there's obviously Waddle and Smith, who everyone loves. And I think as a prospect, Chase was just overall better. Now we haven't seen Chase play in a year, and we saw Waddle, explode early on last season, and obviously Devonta Smith winning the Heisman as a receiver cannot go understated of how special that is. But I think when you factor in Chase's youth, his overall athleticism, his production at a young age, I think it made it very easy to put him as the wide receiver 1. I think people are just underestimating the fact that we didn't see him this past year and how much better he could have looked and how many doubts he would have erased about, oh, is he, that good of a separator? Is he really this good of an athlete? And when you run a 4.34, whatever he ran at the pro day, I don't know what number is official. I'm not sure if we want to believe the 4.34, but the dude's fast, and he was fast back then. I never bought into the fact that he was like a 4.5 guy. I never thought that he was as limited of an athlete as the perception was. It's just he didn't have that benefit of playing the last year, or he sat out, but. Yes, and like he didn't put that recent tape to erase some of those doubts, but there was no doubt for me that he was wide receiver one.
I wonder, like, personally, I look at it just from all athletes. Like, you get a year off when you're not technically, he's not in his prime by any means, but like you got a year just to chill out, put on strength, improve whatever weaknesses you had in your game, and not have to worry about being banged up. Like, I don't understand why some of these guys, I understand why, but some of these guys were penalized for it. It's just ridiculous, in my opinion.
Right. And you want to see those guys like take advantage of that time off. Like, you don't want to see them just laying around, just doing nothing. You want to see them make those improvements as an athlete. And also he was 20 years old when he was out, and some of those guys are still developing athletically. Right. So a great example, T. Higgins last year was 21 years old when he tested at Clemson's pro day and stuff. And he only ran like a 4.5 something 40. And he didn't really look that athletic. And that was a big knock on him. Like, what is his overall athleticism? Well, and then he proved to be a slightly better athlete on the field in his rookie season. And you're thinking, okay, these guys are still growing into their bodies. They're still developing athletically. So when we saw Jamar at 19 years old, there was questions about his true athleticism. He was always explosive and powerful, but how fast and how quick was he really? And I think he utilized that time of his life that he's still growing, and he just went pedal to the metal and started training from the fall all the way up into his pro day. So he definitely took advantage of that.
And I think he's the best receiver frame wise. I think out of the draft overall, just 6'1", 210. He might be young, but I think he is like fully grown into his frame versus a guy like Waddle, 5'10", 180, or Devontae Smith, 6 foot, let's call it 155. So I think that Jamar Chase, as far as frame, him and I always mix Rashad Bateman were the only true outside number one receivers in this draft. I think Devontae Smith, as much as he looked like he could do it all, I think he's going to be limited in the NFL of his effectiveness.
I mean, that's fair. Like, we haven't really seen, like, we've seen players under 175 succeed, and people always throw out like Marvin Harrison and stuff like that, but that's obviously rare. But like, in order for Devonta Smith to be who he was in Alabama, he just has to become a better athlete. And I don't really know if he's like this 4-4 burner guy that's always going to be able to create separation against more physical corners. So I definitely think he's going to be a solid player, and he was worthy of being taken somewhere in the first round. It's just, how much of an upside are you really getting for a guy like that who's on the thin side, but not exactly this all-around great athlete? Like, Deshaun Jackson had the benefit of being a true 4-2 player. He could always just run past the guy and catch those deep balls. That's not really Smith's game. So he's going to have to learn to adjust to it, and he's going to have to get a little bit stronger. But he can still be decent. It's just a whether or not like that type of player is worth where Jamar Chase was drafted. And I didn't think that was ever the case.
Yeah, and it's also one of those things, like you said, you can add strength, but adding athleticism isn't something that you can really just do. And I know, like we just said a minute ago, that guys are still growing into their body, but you have certain features that make you an elite athlete, and you can add strength, but it may not necessarily always translate. Do you think it was a reach for where the Eagles traded up and got him at 10? Was it?
Yes, I think they went up to 10 to get him. And I think that was still probably on the early side because, like you said, like these guys are still growing into themselves, but also Smith is 2 years older than Jamar Chase, right? He spent 4 years in Alabama's training
he caught
program.
The touchdown from Tua, I believe, right?
That was his freshman year in 2017.
Yeah.
So like he's been there for a long time, and he wasn't that productive until later part of his career. And that's the whole thing with receivers. You want to see them produce as underclassmen. You want to see them enter the NFL as underclassmen. So he was already on the older side. And just being in Alabama's, locker room and weight room for 4 years and still being at 170, that's where he belongs. I don't think it would do him any good to add too much weight, but it's also, like you said, going to limit how much he can be successful.
100%.
So looking back the past 2 years of the Zach Taylor era, so last year, the draft, there was a lot of buzz around the first 3 rounds picks, obviously Burrow, and then T. Higgins, and then a guy that I think that has underperformed is Logan Wilson. I was excited when we drafted Logan Wilson. I thought he was going to be an absolute beast. Where do you think the expectations lie coming into year 2 for Logan Wilson?
So Wilson's interesting because he shares my exact birthday, so he's a little bit on the older side for a young player. So he's gonna be 25 this year. So he's already like the age of some guys when they enter the second contract. So he doesn't really have that advantage of being a high upside player. So you would have expected him to be a little bit better as a rookie, but even still, linebackers still can sometimes be challenging transitioning into the NFL quickly, especially when your defensive tackles in front of you keep dying off and you don't really have the benefit of guys eating up blocks. So he was never really in that great of a situation. But as the year went on, he slowly got more playing time. I think the game kind of slowed down for him. He started making some more plays on the ball. I think he had like a couple of pass deflections in this first couple of games. One of them, I believe it was either him intercepting the ball or Keen Davis Gaither intercepting the ball against the Eagles. I'll have to look back at that. But yeah, he was very, middling at the beginning of the season. Then he started slowly coming onto his own. And now he's going to get that opportunity as a starter next to Jermaine Pratt in this defense. And I think we're going to see a more consistent player because he's already a really good athlete. He already had that production at Wyoming. It's just a matter of the game kind of slowing down, which is mainly the case for most linebackers.
So, of this rebuild within the Bengals organization, where do you think, at this time, where do our weaknesses lie? I mean, obviously we have Jonah Williams who needs to stay healthy throughout this year, Riley Reef at right tackle. And then I feel like the interior offensive line is a weak point, but outside of the offensive line, where do you think our weaknesses lie?
Right. Interior offensive line is a weakness until it's not. Like it can be right now, it's projected to be better, but until it's shown to be better, it's still an area that teams are going to try to take advantage of. Outside of that, I think depth at receiver is a potential issue. And depth at receiver doesn't matter that much as long as your guys stay healthy. You're not rotating guys in and out that much, but it's something to kind of keep an eye on. And outside of that, like the defensive line got a huge uplift and facelift, if you will. There's like 16 guys now that make up that position group, but there's not really one pass rusher that you can rely on, not like a Carl Lawson, not like a Carlos Dunlap or Geno Atkins when they were in their prime. So they're really trying to figure out how to replicate that production. If they're just going to just attack it with quantity and just overall depth, that's fine. But guys like Trey Hendrickson need to live up to their contract, and Ogunjobi has to take advantage of this 1-year prove-it deal. So I would say probably the interior, the offensive line, receiver depth, and just overall defensive line. Who is going to make those plays, right? Because both run defense and pass rush was a huge weakness for them, and they obviously addressed it with 4 draft picks and a lot of money in free agency. But those guys have to live up to their billing.
So out of the, obviously you just said interior line, out of the linemen they drafted, and I'm only saying this because I bet against ECU twice this year because they were really bad. But Deontay Smith, I believe that's his name, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's pretty solid for a 4th round pick. How do you feel about the offensive line that they addressed it? Obviously, just getting big bodies is a good feeling, at least being a Jets fan. I just like to see them draft offensive linemen. But how did you feel about this draft not taking somebody in the 1st round, but filling up in those later rounds?
Well, as a Jets fan, I'm sure you're aware of Frank Pollock, who was the offensive line coach. Now he's back in Cincinnati. And I think that makes a big difference considering who was the offensive line coach beforehand. I think it's not an exaggeration to say that Jim Turner was the worst offensive line coach in the NFL. Like legitimately as a person and as a coach, there was no positives about him. So he had to go, and to replace him with at least a quality coach in Frank Pollock will make a big difference with the guys already there. And also with the guys that they brought in now. I think Deontay Smith can be the key to this draft, becoming from a B grade to an A grade down the road. Like you're not expecting anything from him this year. They have their 2 starting tackles, and Deontay Smith has to prove that he can maintain whatever weight they ask him to put on. He was down to 280, I think, before the season began. He was quarantined 3 times before ECU started their season. He was down to 280 because of that. He wasn't allowed to work out and obviously go to the dining hall or anything like that. And I think that's why he opted out. He played 1 game at that weight and said, I'm done with this. Like, I'm just going to get ready for the Senior Bowl. He got his weight up for the Senior Bowl, apparently was a Senior Bowl standout at both tackle and guard. You're not going to see him play this year because they have their tackles now, and they're going to ask him to put on weight. But I think in 2022 or 2023, if Deontay Smith is at least a decent tackle, which with that length and that natural quickness, you can kind of expect him to be somewhat like that with a good offensive line coach. I think you can look at this draft class a lot better because you're getting a starting tackle in the 4th round.
Yeah. Do you think that if he didn't opt out, he would have went higher?
Potentially, right? Like, and maybe he
wasn't
would
a powerhouse by any means, but they have
right.
guys that get drafted out there.
Yeah, and like had he had played at 285 or 280 and played at that level, like who knows where he would have gone. I think Dane Brugler had him as a 3rd-round player. I know PFF had him as like a late 3rd, early 4th. So had he had more recent tape, maybe he would have jumped into the 3rd. But maybe had he continued playing at that weight under where he was comfortable, it would have hurt him. So I think this is about where he should have gone, all things considered. And I think it could be a really good value pick in the future.
And of the interior offensive line that we have so far, one that I don't know if I'll ever. So the John Ross pick was one of my least favorite picks in the history of the Bengals organization.
He's fast.
Other than that, when we drafted Billy Price, I thought that was it. I was like, oh, we got our center. That's the guy. And somehow I have been let down over and over and over. And do you think there's any kind of chance, we didn't pick up the 5th-year option. Do you think there's any chance that he shows any kind of improvement this year under Frank Pollock?
Yeah, that's the key, because looking back at Price's rookie season, like at the time, I didn't think he was too great. I was never that high on Price to begin with. I thought he was just a really limited player, and he's obviously shown to be that in the NFL. But compared to how he's played the last 2 years under Turner, it's so much worse than what he looked like as a rookie, and he wasn't even that good as a rookie. So I think there is hope that he comes back with Pollock. Pollock teaches him similar things that he did as a rookie, and he gets at least at best an average player. And if that's what you need when Trey Hopkins is coming back, however much time Trey needs to come back, if that's what you get out of Billy Price, I think that's enough. I don't think it's going to be enough for him to completely win the starting job and get re-signed for a starting caliber contract. But I think he can be the best version of whoever he is now under Frank Pollock.
So looking outside of the Bengals organization, what were your draft picks, this past weekend, your favorite ones and your least favorite ones, as far as value goes?
So I think the ones that stood out on the negative side, they went back to back. So 2 NFC West teams picking Dwayne Eskridge and Tutu Atwell at the bottom of the 2nd round. The Seahawks and Rams were definitely surprising to me. We talk about Devonta Smith being skinny. Tutu Atwell's barely 150, but that's the Rams. They kind of go off the wall. Eskridge being 24 years old, coming out of Western Michigan, I believe. I don't think he probably should have gone in that range, but right after that,
I think he's older than DK Metcalf, and DK Metcalf's going into his 3rd year.
Right. So, I mean, again, those teams kind of do their own thing. But then right after that, it's one of my favorite picks, and Terrace Marshall. I guess he had a medical from his high school days. He was a 5-star recruit coming into LSU, but I think he had some type of surgery that he had in high school, and I guess that kind of scared teams, and he fell inexplicably to the bottom of the 2nd round. The Panthers are going to replace Curtis Samuel with, in my opinion, the 3rd or 4th best receiver in this class in the bottom of the 2nd round. That really stood out to me. Quinn Miners, too. I don't think he should have fell all the way to the bottom of the 3rd round. Broncos are now dealing with a crisis on offensive line because apparently Juwan James just tore his Achilles squatting or something like that off of the team facility. So getting Quinn Miners to bolster up offensive line depth in the bottom of the 3rd round, that really stood out to me as well.
What are your thoughts on Davis Mills getting drafted by the Texans? I mean, that just seems like an absolute wild move. I guess that they're assuming he's going to be I don't know if he's going to be the starting quarterback, but I think they're going to have some quarterback issues this year.
Yeah, so they have Tyrod Taylor there with Pep Hamilton as the new quarterback's coach. They traded for the greatest quarterback of all time, Ryan Finley. So I guess he's some type of a backup.
NC State.
Yeah. So I guess Davis Mills is just there to chill.
But it's your first pick of the draft, using it on a quarterback that probably is never going to play. It's just,
I think it's sending a message.
First pick of the draft.
I think it's sending a message. I think they know. I think there's multiple things here. I think that the fact that there aren't a lot of his teammates coming to his defense, as well as the team drafting a quarterback with their first pick in this draft, is sending a loud and clear message that this isn't going to end well for Deshaun Watson.
I was about to say, are we saying his name or are we not saying his name?
It's like Voldemort, right?
Right.
No, you could say his name. Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's I don't want to make any comments. I still don't want to make any comments about Watson until I know more.
Until the facts are all out, right? But it doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good. No.
I mean, I don't know. And this is something that's not necessarily related to the best or worst picks of the draft, but I just want to get your thoughts on, Is building in the trenches that term? Do you think it's overrated for doing a rebuild?
It's not overrated. It's just a matter of how you do it. I think can get you into some type of trouble. It's all about allocating resources, right?
Okay.
Like, do I think that Joe Tooney is a fantastic player? Yes. Do I think that for most teams, spending $48 million guaranteed on him is smart? No. But the Chiefs are a unique example because they have the rest of their team figured
Yeah,
out.
win now.
Yeah, and they have the cap like magic to make it work. So like if you need offensive line help, yeah, if you think the best one, if you think the best player in the entire draft is an offensive lineman and he's sitting there in the face with the 5th overall pick, you should have no qualms of picking him. But I think we are starting to figure out that individual offensive linemen by themselves are not as valuable as some other players at positions that we don't normally think is as valuable as offensive linemen. I think it still matters to make notable investments in the offensive line if it's bad, but getting it to a point where it's like the 2016 Dallas Cowboys, I think that is nowadays it's a little bit overrated.
Yeah. And then we had Monty Ball on last episode, and we were talking about running backs going in the first round. And I've said this to Nick. I've said it to a few of my other friends. If I was a GM, I would never, ever in a million years take a running back in the first round. It would have to be, I don't even know, the great, whoever you want to argue is the greatest running back of all time, then maybe. Because I feel like you can get 80%, 90, 85% of a first round running back in the third, fourth round. Were you a little bit surprised to see 2 running backs go in the first round, especially one of them being the Jaguars, when you got to keep freaking Trevor Lawrence upright?
Yeah, I was surprised at ETN. I think he was getting some buzz with the Bills at the bottom of the first, so I wasn't too surprised that he went in the first round. I was surprised that they went to the Jaguars, but there is the Clemson connection. I think Najee Harris was connected all along to the Steelers, so that wasn't really surprising. But you make a good point. Like we can go back to the Chiefs last year. Like the Chiefs, again, didn't have any holes, but they chose a first round pick on a running back. And you're thinking, okay, that's fine, whatever. But still, like the Chiefs do, every team eventually has long-term needs, right? There's always a position that you can draft and develop for a year or two down the line. And it's just smart to make your top investment in the draft at a position that means more than other positions. So is there ever really a situation where you're fine taking a running back? I don't really think so.
Yeah, and it's just, my point is always running backs life expectancy in the NFL is like 2 to 3 years. So why are you going to take somebody who's getting banged up more than anybody else in the NFL, and you're not, more than likely you're not going to exercise their 5th-year option on them? So why would you do that when you can draft an offensive lineman, you can draft a wide receiver, a quarterback, a cornerback, and use your 5th-year option on and get him on the cheap before he hits free agency? That's just kind of how I look at it. And also, what was it? The 49ers Super Bowl, I believe both starting running backs were undrafted free agents. It's like you can get guys off other practice squads, I feel like, in 2021.
I mean, the running back by himself is not as important as the overall scheme and the talent of your offensive line, right? It's below the pecking order. And to your point about, life expectancy and taking a lot of hits, like the counter argument is you shouldn't really have a single running back taking that much of the load anymore. You can have guys rotate in and out, and also just, accelerates the argument of, do you really need to invest so much in one guy to handle all this production? And when you think of it like that, like you don't want to make that investment if you don't want to give your running back 25, 30 carries a game anymore.
Yeah, it's backfield by committee almost at this point.
Yeah, nowadays, I was recently listening to an interview with Eddie George, and he said 25 carries was a light day that day. And nowadays, running back gets 25 carries
unless you're Derrick Henry.
Right, exactly. So reaching back to the Jaguars point a little bit, I think that their second round pick with Walker Little, a guy who tore his ACL 2019 and then opted out 2020. I think that he easily could have been a first round pick this year. Do you think that was a solid pick by the Jaguars?
Walker Little was a guy that was roughly connected to the Bengals. And I think that would have been a mistake to make with that 46th pick because there's just so much unknown, right? Had he played this past year, I think PFF had him as like the 24th or 26th ranked prospect. He was really good with Stanford. Problem is that was like 2-3 years ago. We don't know what he is now. And I don't blame him for opting out. It's the same thing that Penei Sewell did. So there's no reason to blame him when you don't blame Sewell for that. But the fact that he didn't play at all the previous year outside of just like 60 or so snaps before he got injured, it's just too much of an unknown for me to make that investment that early, despite him being the number one recruit back in 2017 and being that athletic, mold of clay at 6'7", 310. I think for the Jaguar situation, it's ideal because you have Cam Robinson playing on the franchise tag and you need some type of long-term option behind him at left tackle. So for them, I think it made sense. For the Bengals, who needed offensive line help immediately, it probably didn't make sense. But even still, I don't know if I would have taken that risk that early.
So, John, I have two final questions. First final question. Give me your Mount Rushmore of bad Bengals quarterbacks.
Bad Bengals quarterbacks.
Yes. If you need me to go first, I have one ready.
I'll start with Akili Smith.
Okay. Dave
Klingler. Those are really the two that first come to mind. I want to hear you one now.
Gus Frerotte.
Yeah. I don't really attach myself to bad Bengals history just because there's a lot of it, and a lot of it was before I was born, so I try to stay away from that. So if I were to think of one more, I'm trying to think of more of a recent one so we can get some variety here. Ryan Finley. Yeah, easy.
Ryan Finley? Okay. Yeah. That's not bad. I was going to say John Kitna, but...
Oh, come on. It wasn't that bad. It's a bit harsh, but I understand.
And then my final question. I'm gonna set the over/under at 6.5 for Bengals wins this year. Are you taking the over or under?
I feel like 6.5 has been the over/under for the past 2 years, and each time I hit the over, and of course the Bengals get injured and they don't hit the over. Now you're at 17 games, and I have to adjust this. So the 6-10's the new 7, or 7-10's the new 6-10. I say that right now they're set up to score points with any going up against any offense in the league. I think they can keep up with most offenses in the league and keep themselves in games. It's just a matter of, is this team finally going to close out those close games? Because they haven't done in the past 2 years. They're still at best third in the division right now. I think we can all say that the Steelers are definitely trending downward, which to some of us is great news and long-awaited news. But the Browns and the Ravens, they're still right now at the top until something bad happens to them. So I think, accounting for the eventual injuries that the Bengals will suffer, I think 7 to 8 wins is still very possible. So I'll say barely over on the 6.5.
I'm so excited for the Steelers to be bad. I'm so excited. It's been so long.
Really, it has.
Yeah, it's been since Tommy Maddox went down with the strained elbow. But John, that's all I got, man. Where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at John2_Sheeran. You can find my work and all of our work at Cincy Jungle at cincyjungle.com. You can listen to me and my co-host Anthony Kazenza on the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. And yeah, that's about it.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
No problem. Take it easy.